Now there is a chapter in the Constitution called Special and Temporary Provisions. The chapter itself is called that. 370 relates to 371 onwards. There are 20 provisions, special provisions relating to Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Tripura, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh. For all these states there are special provisions. So this is because India is such a vast country. In fact, there are special provisions for Goa. There are special provisions for Sikkim. You know, it is a whole lot. Because India was not formed in one go. You know, Sikkim came at a particular time. Goa came at another time. And there are backward areas. For example, Telangana, here at that time. And in Gujarat, Saurashtra and Kutch areas. And in the northeast, various areas. And so, special provisions had to be made for each one of these. So, there is nothing special about 370 or Kashmir. If your focus is only on Kashmir, then it looks as if there is a special provision only for Kashmir. There are special provisions depending on the areas, their problems, their history, their historical background and all that. One second. The northeast is concerned, the special provisions are because those tribes, they do not want some other laws from India. In fact, these areas were called at one time excluded areas in the northeast. I don't know if you are aware of it. Completely excluded from the government of India. Even when the Governor General was ruling, the Viceroy, it says none of the provisions of the government of India, any law of government of India, would apply to those areas in Nagaland unless the Nagaland Assembly says that they would be applicable to us. You follow that? Then in Manipur, certain areas it says, no law made by the Manipur Assembly also would apply to certain areas unless there are autonomous areas there, hills, unless the people of those hills representing them accept these things. Because this is to preserve their culture, their special, this one and all that. Now 370 came, it's a very complex question. 370 came at a time when Kashmir did not merge with us. There are two things. One is, acceding to India. The second is merging. There are two things. There are two steps in the merging of Indian states, all the states. First they acceded to India, saying that except in the case of defense, external affairs and certain things, we accede to India. Then there is a merger agreement. You know, they have completely merged their areas. In the case of Kashmir, when the constitution was done, the merger did not take place. It was only the accession. He has acceded. That accession also has taken under different circumstances. Then one more thing is, by the time the Kashmir was being sort of integrated into India, by the time the independence came, there was an agitation in Kashmir for Nai Kashmir movement. You know, there was a Maharaja. This chap, what is his name? Sheikh Abdullah wanted to throw him out and wanted to establish a democratic this one. So there was a move already to have a constitution. You follow? They had already constituted a constituent assembly for that. And what happened? Our Indian leaders encouraged them because there must be democratic rule in that particular area. So it is under those circumstances that a constitution was made there. And that constitution was working, and our constitution also was working simultaneously. Constitution of India was working here for India. That constitution was working for Kashmir. And then there are a lot of coordination. They said, in that Kashmir constitution, you should say that you would join Indian Union unconditionally. Similarly, here we have said that they have joined unconditionally. But certain provisions we have left to the constitution, this one, because the agitation was already going on. And there they didn't want, for example, in India, I would tell you, their main plank was this one, new land policy. The land which was there with the king, the Maharaja, was to be taken over and to be distributed to various people. In India, the land legislation was being attacked by the Supreme Court, if you remember. All our land laws which we had made, they have all been struck down by the Supreme Court. And so we had to create another, what is called Schedule 10, I think, where all the laws were put. The following laws shall not be questioned in the judiciary. Now they were afraid that if the fundamental rights are incorporated in the Kashmir constitution, their land laws also would suffer. So that's why there were negotiations going on. It is under those circumstances that 370 was brought in. And 370 says below that, if there is any change to be made in this section, in 370, it has to be referred back to the Constituent Assembly. There is no Constituent Assembly now in Kashmir. It is possible that if you want to abolish it, that you can ask Kashmiri fellows to have a new Constituent Assembly. And then that Constituent Assembly has to say that please remove this particular clause. That's one procedure. Are you prepared to do that? Do you want to reopen the whole Pandora's box and then say Kashmir should have a Constituent Assembly? Suppose the Constituent Assembly tomorrow says Kashmir should be independent. What would you do? There are unknowns. The second point is, what is the benefit you get by abolishing 370? 370 was done saying that certain provisions of the Indian Constitution, the most essential part of 370 is, certain provisions of the Constitution of India will not apply to Jammu Kashmir unless Jammu Kashmir government itself agrees to those. That's what it says. That was the original understanding up to 1953. But thereafter, year after year, in fact you may not like it, year after year, Government of India in a very surreptitious manner, that means without telling them, pushed all the laws. Today there is no law in India which does not apply to Jammu and Kashmir except two. Their governor is for 6 years, whereas our governors are for 5 years. Two, President's rule does not apply there directly. They have what is called governor's rule. Except these two, in CBI jurisdiction there is something. Except these three, everything else in Government of India was pushed very slowly year after year. In fact, the Kashmiris' complaint is that, now if you want to abolish it, it makes no difference to you. It is foolish, to abolish it. It doesn't benefit you at all. You are unnecessarily raking up something which would open a Pandora's box without giving you any benefit. That's why we should not touch 370. Okay?
So the question is that, sir, isn't it ridiculous that the Indian Union provides funds to Kashmir from the taxes of public, but the Indian public can't go into Kashmir and buy land over there?
In Northeast, you cannot buy land. Officers, Government of India officers who are posted in the Northeast cannot buy land. In fact, I wanted to make an exception to that. These are officers of All India services posted in Nagaland, working for you. How do you say that you cannot buy land there? So these laws are there in Uttarakhand. All those field areas, Uttarakhand also. So information is very, very limited. You must take a total view. That is it.
And we will thank you from the bottom of our heart. We look forward to many more fruitful interactions with you. Please do find time and encourage our young budding managers. Look forward to many more opportunities.
I request Professor Hemnath Rao sir to address, conclude.
Ladies and gentlemen, I always say that IP is very unconventional and unconventional in more ways than one. I've been asked to come after a wonderful vote of thanks that we had from our team. I would only like to tell you, friends, you have had a glorious opportunity to hear two former secretaries to the government of India. And both of whom, they practically talk their walk. We in management talk about talking the walk and walking the talk. They have walked the path of change and they have thought about how they have negotiated. Each one of you has to carry with you these lessons. Both of them are great turnaround artists. We heard one speaker, Mr. Padmanabhaiah, talking about the turnaround strategy and the turnaround story, both in Jammu and Kashmir and the northeastern region, right? These are basically fundamental principles of management that were used in turning around, political turnaround, economic turnaround, cultural turnaround, in two of the most problem-ridden, one state and one region of the country. And we heard Mr. Kwaja talking about his experience with the Singareni collieries. Once upon a time, a great enterprise of Hyderabad state and the state of Andhra Pradesh went into trouble later. As people say, the rise, the fall, and the rise of Singareni collieries. In very few words, he traced the glory of this enterprise and sent out a very powerful message that A, if you want to be a leader, you should learn to own up responsibility for the performance of the enterprise. You can't expose your subordinates to attacks of non-performance. You as a leader, you fight from the front and you take complete responsibility. This is one powerful lesson that came across. And second, even more powerful lesson that came across, both in the context of Singareni collieries as well as other public enterprises that he was talking about, is the need for coordination. I'm a rural development person. We talk about convergence of all the programs. He talked about convergence of various ministries. Can you believe for a power plant to run, how many ministries did he talk about? The Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, the Ministry of Environment and Forests, the Ministry of Land Resources probably, the Ministry of Railways, the Ministry of Steel, the Ministry of Coal, the Ministry of Mines. They've all come together to empower the Ministry of Power to perform. These are very powerful lessons, and I'm sure each one of you will take this as a significant learning takeaway with you and make the best use of it in your careers ahead. I would like to thank the two great speakers once again. They're not only physically tall, they've also proved that they're intellectually tall leaders who have demonstrated performance. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.